So I haven't posted a video in a while. So it's Saturday. I got some work done this morning, so I'll post a video. What I'm doing here is getting ready to put the binding on the fretboards. And I'm starting out. I use tape, masking tape, to hold like a clamp. And a lot of people might not realize this, but the different colors of masking tape have different properties. And so the blue tape, you see, there's just normal painter's tape, comes off pretty easy. The yellow tape is more tacky, and then it also stretches a little bit, and it's like some semi-elastic. And so what I'm doing here is I put a bead of binding glue across the binding, stick it against the edge of the fretboard, and then I fold the yellow tape over the top and use that as clamping pressure because it doesn't need much clamping pressure. It's a straight edge on the fretboard and it's a straight piece of binding. So I just need it to hold in place with no gaps. And so the yellow masking tape works really well for binding. As a matter of fact, Stu Mack calls it binding tape, but when you look at it, you can see it's 3M Scotch, brand tape. It's just a different level of tackiness for their painter's tape. Here, while the binding dries, it takes about 10 hours for the binding to get really hard. So I'm not going to do anything for a while on that binding. But in the meantime, on the sides of the fretboard, now that the frets are pushed in, there's little gaps right at the very bottom of the fret tang from where the slot was cut into the fretboard, and then where the bottom of the tang reaches in the slot. And obviously you don't want it to bottom out, so the slot's always just a hair deeper than the actual fret tang. So I'm just going through with super glue here and filling in the bottom of the slot so the fret is actually up against solid material in the fretboard. A lot of people say, especially the high-end builders will say, a whole bunch of little details makes a difference for a great sounding guitar. And this is one of the things they say is being able to fill in those gaps, fills in any potential, air gaps underneath the frets, and, supposedly for better tone. You're not going to see it because there's going to be binding on the side that's going to cover all that up anyhow. But I don't know how true it is or isn't, so I always figure if the experts say to do it, then I go ahead and do it and fill in the fret holes or gaps with glue so that's way it's solid all the way through. So here you can see underneath the fret tangs, there's no gap between the wood and the bottom of the fret. So that's a good thing. You can't tell that I even put glue in there. Here's another view of the side of the fret. You can see the fret goes right down in the wood now, so can't even see the glue that I filled in there. Now I'm getting ready to put the binding on the side so I could pull. This is the next day, so I'm going to pull the tape off of the end of the fretboard there, and then you can see the binding sticks out wider, and I'm just going to take my nippers there and nip off the binding so it's nice and flat against the end. And then I'll take some sandpaper and sand it so it's nice and smooth. Then I'll get ready to put the binding on the side of the fretboard. It's actually, I'm just using a file here, my fret file. File's nice and flat. Just trying to make sure I scrape all the glue off from the edges. Get both sides nice and flat. And then go for the side binding. Here I'm just laying tape down on the top of the fretboard, so that way when I put the binding on the side, if there's any glue squeeze out, not if, there will be glue squeeze out, the glue squeeze out doesn't get nearly as much on the top of the fretboard, so it's a lot less cleanup to do later. Because for the most part, the top of the fretboard is done. Remember, I sanded it, I got all the inlays in, so it's mostly done other than some fretwork. So when I put the binding glue on the side, I don't want it to ooze out and then get all over the fretboard, and then I got to go through and pick all the little glue spots out and then sand them smooth again. So you just tape over the top of the fretboard, and it helps keep the fretboard looking clean, keeps all the glue squeeze out off of it. And here's more of that tape. This is the green tape. It's a little less tacky than the yellow. I don't think it matters. I just got lots of it, so I decided to use the green tacky tape this time. And basically, I put all the tape across the top of the fretboard, and then you can see the binding strips there. Test it for fit. I think I tried to use the heat gun this time to see if I can, because it's curved a little bit because it comes in a roll. So I think I tried to use my heat gun to see if I can straighten it out. But I noticed it's starting to smoke, so it was getting a little too hot. So I think I put the heat gun away and said, "No, just deal with it." So you put the binding glue along one side of the fretboard, and then you put the binding on, and then you wrap the tape over, and the tape is plenty strong enough to clamp it without any gaps and hold it nice and tight against the fretboard. Then flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Binding glue, and then you put the binding on and then just tape it in place. And then basically wait 10 or 12 hours and repeat 3 more times. So I'm going to take a break from the fretboards for a while and get back to some actual woodworking. So here you can see I'm screwing my template on to one of the mahogany backs and using my drill press to hog away some of the wood. What I'm doing is I'm going to route that channel that you see in the template, route that channel into the mahogany, and that's the wiring channel that goes from the switch on the top of the guitar through where the pickup cavity is, all the way down to the bottom where the control cavity is. So that way, basically, before we glue the top on, we got to cut this channel in there and just make sure that there's enough room to fit all the wires from the switch and then the pickup wires down to the control cavity. And so yeah, just route it out real quick and then unscrew the template and it's good to go. And see, this is the lefty, so the template is just screwed in not upside down, flipped over. So I'm always got to make sure, Jim, with the lefty, that I'm really paying attention that I don't accidentally route something the wrong direction or make it like a righty and then I ruin the entire slab. So anyhow, this is the lefty, and I always do the lefty last. So I do 3 righties in the row, so it's the same thing every single time. And then I do the lefty where I can stop for a minute, think about it, flip it over, and then just make sure that I'm getting everything correctly aligned before I start hogging into the wood. Now I put that blue tape down. I think I showed you that before, how I use that as to clamp the templates into place. So I'm putting that blue tape down so I can clamp this next template I made. And this is going to be the one to route out the control cavity, you know, where the volume and tone knobs go, and then also the cavity in the top where the switch goes. So again, I take it over to the drill press and I hog out as much wood as I can with the Forstner bit drill. That way I can save my router bits, because that's a lot of wood to hog out with just a router bit. And the drill press goes through it super easy. So hog out as much as I can on the drill press, and then I'll take it over to the workbench and then clean it up with the router. So this is finishing up the router, at least the first level of it. The router only goes so deep, so after I get a good clean pass with the router, it routes about halfway as deep as it needs to go. Then I can pull the template off, and then the bearing on the template follows the top part of the wood that I just routed. So then basically I go from there, so I can keep going deeper, because it has to go almost an inch and 9/16 through the wood, so it's a really deep cavity there, and most router bits aren't that long. So you route the first half with the template on, then you pull the template and then use what you already routed as your guide bearing for the second half. So do that, then you clean up the fuzzy edges with sandpaper, and that's it. Nothing new to see here other than this is the lefty again. So this is the fourth one finally. The other 2 in between I didn't record because it's all the same thing. But here's the lefty. Oh, and this is where, being stupid, I stuck my finger in the moving drill bit and cut my finger open, not paying attention. Stupid. Here in slow motion, not paying attention, trying to clean out the sawdust from the cavity, and watch that middle finger on my right hand right into the bottom of the pointy side of the Forstner bit. Friggin' idiot. That's how most mistakes happen, is not paying attention to most stupid routine tasks when you're woodworking. And then the last thing I do here is weigh each of the mahogany slabs, just so I got a good reference for how much the total guitar weighs based on the weight of the slab. And they weigh anywhere from almost 4 pounds to 5.5 pounds.